Hello, I'm Alicia Merrett, and my quilt Genesis of the Start is in Light the World exhibition at the Gregan Museum. I was born in Argentina, a very sunny country with bright blue skies and lots of flowers and many colors in my garden. I think that's why I love color so much and I use it in my quilts. My mother was a great stitcher, craftsperson and photographer, and I learned all those skills from her. I studied sociology at university in Buenos Aires, and I met my future husband, an Englishman, at a research institute where he was working for a year. He had to leave for India, where he had another job for another year, but we wrote to each other for about 18 months until I graduated and travelled to England to pursue further studies. A year later we married, and I've lived in England ever since. I've stitched all my life, clothes, all sorts of things. And in the 1970s I studied photography, but for various reasons I couldn't go on to practice it. So I started crafting many different things. Eventually I became a toy maker, making mostly soft toys, particularly teddy bears and cloth dolls. And then I started teaching in adult education in London, and I also became an author and wrote a number of books on those subjects, some of which you can still find in Amazon Marketplace. And that particular art form brought me to Utah in 1993, I think it was, to attend a cloth doll making conference, which I enjoyed very much. As my daughters grew up and stopped playing with toys and dolls, I decided I wanted to move on and do something else. I'm still interested in textiles. Soft things are my thing, and I had a go at embroidery, but I soon gave up because it's a bit like drawing, and I'm not very good at drawing. I'm a photographer, and when you look through the lens and arrange existing things, shapes, lines, colors, that's what appeals to me, and quilting seemed to be the right thing to do. But not traditional quilting, which I admire, but it required maths and precision, which I didn't feel like I could cope with. But one day I visited an exhibition in London called Contemporary American Quilting. I was quite stunned by what I saw. There was work by Nancy Crowe, Michael James, Carol Bryant, and many more. And I decided then and there that was what I wanted to do. It took a while to transition between toy making and quilting, but eventually I made it. And I managed to study with all the teachers, quilters, art quilters that I admire, some in Europe, some in the US. In terms of inspiration, it can come from any of the subjects I'm interested in: art, music, literature, science, ideas, geography, the urban landscape, nature, climate change recently, and of course astronomy and cosmology. Because when I was younger, about 13, 14, I was reading a lot about astronomy, and that's what I wanted to do, to be an astronomer. However, I found out that for that you needed to be good at maths and physics, which I wasn't, so I had to give up the idea. But the interest has persisted right through all this time, and I watched TV programs on science and astronomy, also amateur level, and read about it in newspapers and magazines and keep abreast of latest development. And I'm also interested in science fiction. Going back to quilting, I believe you need to have good quality tools and equipment, but I like to keep it simple. I use a rotary cutter and a mat, a domestic sewing machine with a wide underarm space, and a powerful steam iron. Those are my main working tools. And for designing, nowadays my main tools are my iPad, my computer, and my camera. When I first started quilting, having attended classes with Nancy Grow and all these other people, I was an improvisational piecer. First, making mostly abstract works. Then for several years I made piece textile maps. At various stages I experiment with other things like fuse applique, collage, printing, with thermofax screens, putting text on quilts, all sorts of things. I did try a little bit of dyeing, but wet work is not my thing, so I concentrated on doing what I'm good at, and I bought fabrics from excellent fabric dyers. But again, I did that for now 15 years or so. Eventually came a point when I wanted to move on and wanted to incorporate my interest in photography and computers into my textile work, and technology having advanced quite a lot, things becoming more accessible in terms of cost. I decided to attend some courses or to learn the basics, and from then on, from about last 4 years or so, all my designs are digital. That's, Genesis of the Stars is one of them. I designed them in my iPad computer and sort of come back and forth, do all sorts of things. And when I'm happy with the result, I have it commercially printed in fabric, and then I layer it and machine stitch them. The digital designs take a lot less time than my big piece maps, which could take several months. As I'm getting older, I prefer to work on things that don't take so much effort and time. But my working mode is still improvisation, very much so. I don't keep sketchbooks, I just play with colours and shapes in the iPad computer, just as I would through the lens of a camera. I modify my various things through a variety of apps, make digital collages, and just play until I get what I want to. Sometimes I have an idea of what I'm looking for, and sometimes things just turn up. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at taking notes to remind me of what particular process I followed, different apps in which order. But I'm so involved in this, creating these designs, that I never get to think about making the notes. My design for Like the World, as I said, my Genesis of the Star was spurred by this long-term interest in astronomy, by the photographs of outer space taken by the Hubble telescope, and also by the analysis carried out by scientists from the data from both Earth and space telescopes. We have learned a lot about the early stages of the birth of stars after the Big Bang, and that's a process I was trying to convey in my quilt. Now I'm started looking at the data that will be sent by the recently launched James Webb telescope, whose purpose is to try and have a closer look at the exoplanets that orbit the stars. That leads me to a question I'm always interested in: are we alone in the universe? In terms of, sort of the quilting world, I've been a member of SAQA since the late 1990s, when I transitioned to art quilting. There was very little art quilting in England at the time, so the SAQA journal, which I receive regularly, was a great source for information and learning. I find SAQA is my base, my backup, my safety net. And I do give back to it by helping with fundraising, acting as exhibition curator and juror, being a member of committees, and currently being a mentor. I'm also a member of the Quilters Guild of Great Britain and of their contemporary quilt group, and belong to two exhibiting groups, a British-based one called CQ West and an international one, Viewpoints. And I exhibit widely with both groups, as well as entering SAQA and other exhibitions, which, if I'm accepted, means my quilt travel all over the world, even if I don't myself very often now. Thank you for listening. Bye.